This question comes from Jason Dayton, and it says, just out of curiosity, I've been watching your videos and I've been wondering what denomination you claim, if any. What do you think about denominations in general? Okay, so my denominational history is that between the age of about 0 and 8, my family attended a Baptist church, and that was a continuation of their background. They had a Baptist heritage. My mum's parents were saved at a Billy Graham crusade, I believe. I'm not sure how my dad's parents were saved, but I know they attended a Baptist church. And whenever we went to visit my grandma, we would attend her Baptist church as well. So I was kind of born into that kind of background. However, when I was still quite young, we left that Baptist church, and for a very brief period, we had this family house church situation while my parents were trying to discern where we should go next. We just used to gather in the living room. Then from the age of about 9 to 19, we went to a Pentecostal church. That Pentecostal church was kind of where I grew up. It was hyper charismatic, and it eventually collapsed in quite spectacular fashion, as I've been talking about recently on this channel. That for me led to a period of about 2 or 3 years when I didn't go to any church. It took me a while to process the implosion of the Pentecostal church. And for those 2 or 3 years, I was just really questioning and testing my faith in general. I was becoming an adult, and I didn't want to believe things merely because I'd been raised by my parents to believe those things. I've always been independent minded. I wanted to know if this was really true. I wanted to own my own faith. So I began asking big questions of God, like why is there pain in the world? And what about evolution and dinosaurs? And why do babies die? All these big questions. And during that time, I was just on this personal journey, reading voraciously, researching, investigating, and trying to find answers. And I was just prepared to go wherever the evidence may lead. Now, through that period of questioning, my faith grew actually exponentially. It really exploded and became much, much stronger than before. And for the first time, my faith became my own as well. All of my research had led me straight to Jesus. He really is the truth. He could answer all my questions. And indeed, the world didn't make sense without him to answer those questions, I found. So at the age of about 22 or 23 now being utterly convinced of this truth and having a strong personal faith in my adulthood, I started attending an independent evangelical church with no denominational affiliation. It's difficult to give a sense of that church in just a few sentences, but I would say that it's a conservative evangelical church with a strong focus on the word and on the gospel. It's just a solid place, I guess, and an unspectacular place, but I say that not in an unkind way. It's exactly what I needed after the roller coaster of the hyper-charismatic teenage years. I just needed somewhere solid and dependable and unspectacular and word-focused and word-based, which is what that church was. However, over the years, I became increasingly restless at that church. I think going back even to 2013 when I made the Restless Church series, this idea has been growing in me that church as we know it today in general is not the church as we see it in the New Testament. And that if the church is to function and be effective in this postmodern era and in the difficult years that seem to lie ahead of us, we're going to need to get back to that New Testament model. We're going to need to get back to the book of Acts. So I've been growing in restlessness about this whole issue for many, many years. And then COVID happened, and COVID just really brought a lot of my fears and frustrations about this issue all to a head. The way the church laid down to the government lockdowns and the way they meekly complied with their edicts. You know, I look at the authorities telling the disciples in the book of Acts to stop preaching Jesus, and the way that they just engaged in civil disobedience, saying we must obey God rather than any human authority. And then I contrast that with the way that the church just meekly agreed and bowed down to the government and was shut down with no protest, and how Christian leaders during that time just disappeared for a couple of years because outside of Sunday services, they just seemed to be lost. They didn't know what Christianity was outside of a Sunday service. Anyway, I'm going off track here, sorry. Basically, COVID just gave me time to pause and reflect, and it left me feeling that it was time to pursue that better way. It is time to investigate what a New Testament church could and should look like here and now. Because I could spend the rest of my life being restless and frustrated in that model, or I could pursue something better. And I thought that now was the time to do it. Now is the time to pursue it. So within the past year then, I started attending my local church, and I like that idea. I like that idea that it is my local church community, not church shopping far and wide anymore, but just saying, this is my community. These are my neighbors. These are my people. This is where God has planted me. We're not all going to be the same. We're not all going to have the same theology, but I'm just going to invest in the place where I live. I think there's something in that. to get away from the consumerist view of church and to just say, this is where God has put me, so this is where I'm going to put my hand to the plow. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And this current church that I'm going to right now is going through a change itself, which is also part of the appeal. They are currently trying to figure out a new direction post-COVID, and they're currently looking for a new church leader as well. So I'm just really intrigued by the direction that it might go in. I don't know if it will, but I'm intrigued enough to see if it will. As for its denomination, this church actually came together through a merging of denominations, so it doesn't have a distinct denominational feel either. It's quite a curious mix, I find. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'm hopeful of what might happen in the time ahead and when they appoint a new leader. But anyway, to answer the question, that's my church history. I don't personally claim any denomination, and my adult faith has largely been spent outside of denominational categories. As for what I think about denominations in general, the second part of this question, I guess there's quite a lot to say about that actually. So let me put a pause on this here, and we'll talk about denominations more generally in the next video.